Hey guys, welcome to the Get Creative podcast. I've got a massive creator, somebody who is unbelievably successful in creating all sorts of things and getting creative to become successful. His name is Berish, and he has generated a lot of money by getting creative. Brett, welcome to the show today. How you doing?
Pace, thanks for having me on. I look forward to hopefully adding some value to all your listeners.
Man alive. I mean, I see your success behind you. I see all this stuff behind you. And without going into a lot of people in my audience already know about you because I've talked about you so many times and how you've become creative and how you built relationships with talent differently than other people, how you built brands differently than anybody else, how you've done so many things so much differently than other people, and you've gotten creative to become as successful as you are. I know my audience is going to want to know, why the heck does Brett continue to work today? Like, why do you continue to show up every day? It's one of the things where people look at your level of success and they say, dude, why aren't you just hanging out on a beach every single day with the amount of money you've generated, the success you've had, the acclaim you currently have? Why keep going?
It's a great question. And the answer is I've got a big chip on my shoulder. And if I have an idea, my goal was always to be at a point where if I have an idea, I want to try it. I want to see if it can work. And even at my stage, and I don't think it changes for anybody, you know, even at my stage, people still don't think it's going to work. You know, my next brand, the next thing I do, you know, people question it. They don't believe in it. They don't think it can happen. They don't think you can be successful. So I think just deep down, I just want to prove it works. I want my team who believes in me and everybody to feel like they've accomplished something and created something.
Where does that chip on the shoulder come from? Does it come from childhood? Does it come from somebody telling you that you'll never be able to do it and just wanting to prove them wrong?
I think it 100% does. I hate to say it, but it's true. I think I was the kid who had lots of ideas. And I love my father, who just passed away to death. He was amazing.
Rest in peace.
Just absolutely amazing. And I'm realizing, you know, we all have demons. We all have things we go through. We all have struggles. My dad, I call it my mistake. My biggest mistake, and it's everyone's biggest mistake, is asking for somebody else for approval. It's always going to be our biggest mistake. Going to somebody and saying, what do you think? What do you think? That's your first mistake in life. What do you think?
Did you do that with your dad? Did you ask your dad?
Of course. And my dad's he was not the type of guy to be like, yeah, let's go do that. Or I love this. Let's go make it happen. And if you went to him with the same idea, he'd probably love it. But with me or my brothers, it's just different. And I get it. I get now why he was like that.
Is it because your identity as his child is hard for him to get past and see the new identity of who you could become?
It's probably that. It's probably the idea that I don't want my son to fail, and I want him to do something that's safer, and I want him to do something that's easier, and I want him to do something, you know, I don't know. I used to think because my dad was the liquor business. You know, I don't think he didn't want my brothers and I in this business. And partly because, Jesus, if we are not successful, is it because of him? Do you know what I mean?
Wow. You just said something that hit me really hard, actually. You said your parents are going to protect you. They're going to give you advice to keep you safe. And your dad is internally saying, maybe it's subconscious, maybe it's conscious. He's saying, I want my son to be successful. I don't want my son to fail, is what you said.
Yes.
And so your dad will do everything in his power to keep you from failure, which means keep you from the hard things. But unfortunately, you have to go through those hard things. I mean, I can only imagine how many hard things you've gone through to get to where you currently are. And your dad wants to protect you from that so you don't fail.
100%. But I think what I've realized, my biggest success is realizing, and I do this every day, is no one's going to help me. No one's going to do what they say they're going to do. I have a saying, every meeting is a great meeting until you leave the room. Like, that's just normal course. Every meeting is a great meeting. I had a great meeting, but once you leave that room, then it's gone. And I assume no one's going to follow up. No one's going to do what they say. No one's going to follow through. Therefore, I have to do everything. My team has to do everything.
Was that a learned behavior?
100%, because I would do the opposite. I assumed, so I always tell people my first 6-7 years was horrifying in this business. And it's partly because it's my fault. I didn't have that view. I assumed people were going to be there. I assumed the distributors would say what they were going to do. I assumed the retailers, I assumed everyone would commit. And that's a mistake, because I look at it as God bless, they come through, but I got to go make it happen. And it's my attitude every single day. And it's a learned attitude. It's a learned view of how
Were there times where somebody would say, we're going to buy X amount of cases of one of your products, you go and deliver those, and they don't pay for it? Did that kind of stuff happen?
No, I think it's more, again, every industry is difficult. In mine, I think I rely on my team. It's what I always refer to as building an army. I have to find one person who believes in my brands, and then find the next one and the next one. So I automatically go in where no one believes. So now I have to just convince people one by one by one. It's very old school. It's very in person. It's very getting into the soul of a person, that they got to love my brands. I'm not, it's amazing how technology has come so far, but I think I'm very old school, and that's how I brand build. So, every distributor is a great distributor, but they got thousands of brands. How do they focus on all those brands? How do you get attention? What do you do to stand out and be different? So that's what I think about every day. What do I do that's going to get us a little bit more advantage when I don't have what my competitors, my big, large, giant competitors like a Diageo or Bacardi has?
Meaning technology and efficiency and
money,
all of those things.
Money. Because the way I look at it is, they can spend their way to success. I can't do that. I can't do it. They can spend.
You got to earn relationships one at a time, like you said, you got to find one person who loves your brand. And what you're talking about is not just your internal team. You obviously need that too. But it sounds like what you mean is you had to find a customer or a distributor that loved your brands. And so they helped push and sell your product because 100%. They believed in you as an individual.
100%. I can go to markets. It's crazy. I can go to Turkey right now, or Romania, or Slovakia, or Ukraine. I can tell you the people that got behind the brand day one, or day two, or day three. It wasn't a group of people. It wasn't an entire company. This is individuals. And that's how, to me, brand building takes place. It's long, it's arduous, it's going to happen over time, but it's just finding one person, and then you find the next person, and you find the next person, and you just keep doing it. And that's how I've done it. That's how I think about it. There's not, I can't, again, I go back to Pace. I can't spend my way. I can't buy consumers. My dad always said, there's an expression I use that my dad taught me: you can't buy cool. You can't buy your way into it. You either are or you're not. But if you're trying to buy the audience, it's a difficult thing to do.
Bro, that is powerful. I had somebody message me yesterday saying, Pace, how have you built your personal brand? And I said, with my own two thumbs, for 7 years, when nobody else believed in me, I had to just keep doing it every day and providing value every day. And slowly, so painstakingly slow, Brett, I'm sure you feel the same exact way. It was like all of a sudden you woke up and people believed in you.
100%.
People look at your success and they go, oh, it must be nice, Brett. You woke up with all the success.
But that's why, on a personal note, that's why, and I started this series a number of years ago called Self-Made. And what I realized is,
great series.
People look at me, Pace, and they think, and I do the same thing with other people. I think they've always been successful. I think it was easy for them. And when I hear successful people talk, I hate it. I can't stand it. What I love is when they tell about all the that they went through to get there. If they failed, if they lost everything, what it was like, because I can relate to that. So when I talk to people now, I'm telling them that, my house was foreclosed on in New York because I stopped paying my mortgage because I put all my money back in the business. That my bank account, I stopped paying my taxes, and the IRS, I didn't realize the IRS will find you. And they swept my bank account and took all my money. And then I put my money, my salary in my girlfriend then name, because I put it all in the business,
How did your girlfriend at the time feel about that?
Well, she's my wife now. And
so she believed in you.
She believed in me, or put it this way. Yeah, she believed in me. But this is where it always comes back to, and I give props to my mom. She's 94 years old now. She rollerblades every day. She's my rock. This is where I tell everybody, you need one person in your life who is going to be there for you during the worst of times, and is going to cheer you on, and is going to pick you up. And she's it for me. She's, you just need one of those people. The goal in life is, don't ask, do you like this? And find one person who's always going to back you when you're in a corner.
I love that. Your mom is kicking butt. Yes. 94 years old.
She's fearless. She's taught me. I like to say she's either fearless or clueless. And those two things are the same thing. Because either of those attributes mean you'll do anything, And I pick up sayings. Like my mom had a saying, and I just used it yesterday to my whole company. And I use it all the time, is just ask, because all they can do is say no. And we're all afraid to ask. We're all afraid to ask. And that's powerful to me.
Yeah. Closed mouths don't get fed. That's for sure. But yeah, I love the same thing. I love hearing people's journey, because you look at, all these amazing bottles. I mean, a lot of my friends drink all your products. I told them that we were going to have a podcast today. My friends are just like, oh my gosh, Brett is the coolest person.
But and again, for those people that are listening, for you, the one thing that all my brands have in common is no one believed in them. No one believes in them. So I have a rum, Bamboo, which is
right here.
Yeah, which with the X in the bottle. I launched that 5 or 6 years ago, and everyone said from our industry, don't do it. Rum is not a thing. It's not growing. Premium rum doesn't exist. And to me, I love that, because if you're telling me not to do it, it means I get to go set the trend. So it's another thing I always say, I don't follow trends. If something's hot, I don't want to do it, because that means I'm late. That means if it's already hot, I'm late, and I'm too late. I want to be in categories that are not hot, where hopefully I can set the trend. We're 2, 3, 4 years later. Oh, Bamboo, that's it's moving. That's in 80 countries. That's the fastest growing premium rum in the world. Premium rum's a thing. So to me, if I'm doing it that way, I feel good about it. It's a struggle, because no one, they want the easy way. Go do hard seltzer and go do RTDs. That's hot. And go do tequila. I don't like that. It's not me.
I love that. Have you always been that way?
Yeah. 100%.
Carving your own path, creating your own wave.
Well, I think I should say yes and no. I like to say my success is literally based on my failure and failures. And what I've learned through those first 6 or 7 years of being in this business has taught me everything. So to give you a great example, and again, I have lots of sayings, I believe. Sometimes not having a plan is a great plan. And so in the beginning, I had, these long-term plans. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to build it. And what you miss out on there is, if you stick to something too long, you've missed it. You got to be nimble. You got to watch what goes on. You got to change your views. I almost equate it to a comedian who does stand-up. When he goes up on stage and tells a joke for the first time, the next night he goes back, he tells it a little different. And the next night he goes back, he tells it a little different. It's probably 20 or 30 times later does he perfect it, but that's based on the feedback. That's based on, how's it hit? What do you do to make it better? And that, to me, is building a business. That's how I look at it. I never know. I try not to overthink it, and it works. It works for me because I'm always surprised. Who knew? You know, with bamboo as an example, Canada would be our #1 market outside the United States in the world, and
For
no one's
rum?
ever been there. Romania is
Wow.
huge. Latvia is enormous. Poland's enormous. None of those markets are rum markets. So again, this is where it gets back to just try. You never know.
That's a good saying too. I like that. Brett Berish special right there. Try, you'll never know. Um, have you had great collaborators in your coming up in your journey that you are just like buddies of yours, brothers in arms that are doing maybe their own business? It might not even have to be the liquor business, but have you had buddies that you share ideas with alongside and you're like brothers in arms to some degree?
I have one person, Rick Ross. So
Wow. Yeah.
Rick Ross to me is like my mother. He is. This is where you. And I met Ross because of this business. I didn't know him before. He loved our brand Bel Air. That's how we met. But he's again another person where if you need motivation, he'll give you a line. If you need to wake up in the morning to something where someone says go and work harder, he's going to give it to you. If you just want to shoot the ideas and try stuff, he'll do it. What's that expression? You know, you're flying the plane as you're building the plane as you're flying.
Yeah.
You know, like that's him. And he's taught me so much about, you know, thinking the same way, but it's nice to have somebody else who's thinking the same way, who's there. But Ross,
somebody's adding to the fire rather than taking away from it and telling you, you're crazy, Brett. You're crazy, Brett. You're crazy, Brett. It's kind of nice to have somebody add fire to you.
And
right?
he'll disagree, but he's not doing it out of, you know, it's out of, he's doing it out of love.
Yeah.
You know, he's doing
like
it out
a good
of love.
friend.
But I'll give you a great example. This is a fun story. It just reminded me. So I remember a number of years ago, I was at this place where I was doing really well. Bel Air, our brand, was just flying. Bamboo was just starting. I didn't know what to do. What do I do with the value that I've created? And I met with the head of, literally the head guy came to my office from an investment bank, the head guy of this global bank who represents everybody. Couldn't believe it. And I sat with him and he tells me I'm doing it. I'm feeling great about myself. He tells me I'm doing it wrong. And I said, what do you mean? He says, you're in too many countries. You're in too many markets. You're not letting the next guy have the opportunity to imagine what it can be like. And I said, no, I'm doing just the opposite. I'm proving it works everywhere. Like I'm proving the brand works in all these places without overspending. I'm making money. And he's like, no, you're doing it wrong. And then I'm thinking,
actually, that makes a lot of sense on both sides. I see the argument. I'm curious where this goes, but like the argument you're saying he's making is if you decide to go sell your company, the next guy who takes that company has got to go, all right, Brett hasn't touched these 25 countries. That's where my upside is. I'm going to take this company. I'm going to go deploy into those 25 countries. I've got a tremendous amount of money to make. You're going over there saying, no, 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 no. I think there's more market share in those existing countries. I just want to prove that those countries will actually buy the product in the first place.
And I'm
so
proving it.
You've got an argument on both sides.
I think this is where, Pace, this is where my up was. I was the guy who, I get business plans all the time. And the business plan says I'm gonna get 1% of the tequila category. In 5 years, it's going to be X. The multiples based on Casamigos are Y. I'm going to sell this thing. And I was that person, and that's the biggest mistake I made, is you're thinking about the exit before you start. And I think that's a horrible way. Again, for some people, this is what you got to do when you're going to raise all sorts of money. That's not me. I got to go build a business. And building a business means I got to make money. I got to make a great brand that's going to be here forever. And you know what? Good shit's going to happen afterwards. So to me, I think when you're thinking about that exit, it's about, you're not thinking brand building. You know, it's not real. So to bring it full circle to this guy, and I'm feeling about myself and terrible. He says, you know, we bought a liquor company. I said, you did? He says, yeah, you know, we have a small fund and we have a fund, and we bought a liquor company. And I said, what'd you buy? And he turns to his two underlings and he says, should we tell him? And then before they could even answer, he says, we bought, and he names the brand. And out of my mouth comes, you bought that piece of shit? Like you bought,
my gosh.
And my brother was shocked as I said it, but it's a terrible brand. And this guy's telling me what to do. And my point is, it's at some point you just gotta, it's your instincts, it's your role, it's what you do. And it goes back to another philosophy I have. If anybody's going to f it up, I want it to be me.
Yeah, really great one. I mean, if you hadn't asked what the brand was, or if you hadn't found out what the brand was, you might have gone home that night second guessing yourself.
100%.
Which is so interesting. It's a great piece of advice for people that are coming up in the game, is that people are going to have all sorts of pieces of advice for you all the time. And this guy sounded legit, because when he says, I've got a fund and I bought a liquor company, homeboy sounds legit.
Correct.
But then you find out the brand, you're like, that's actually not even a brand. It's a crappy product. I do also, just going back before I ask you the next question, I really appreciate what you said earlier. You said, if you start thinking about the exit beforehand, you're not thinking about building a brand. And here's what you mean by that. I think you've been so good at building brand. Building brand for you has been bootstrapping organic relationships and going to people directly, belly to belly, becoming friends with them and having actual real relationships. When you're thinking about an exit, it's hard to build a relationship with people genuinely and authentically, because you're already like in your mind going, I'm leaving this. So I'm basically creating a temporary relationship that I'm going to make a departure from, and I'm going to have a nice financial exit. When you're thinking about your exit before you build brand, oh my gosh, man, I'd never heard anybody put it that way, but that is a really great point.
And, but it's why I think it works for, I was the other guy. I was that other one. But once it switched, I always tell, this is my example. So my mother, we had investors, financial investors. It was a fund, private equity fund. And they wanted to stop. They wanted to blow up the company. And I was on a board call and they needed to make a decision. And I said, I'd put more money in. And I remember calling my mom, and I was on Wooster Street in Broome, New York, and telling her, she knew what was going on. And she says, Brett, I'll sell all my rings for you. I'll do anything you need. And I said, no. But I remember telling her, I love what I'm doing. If I can just survive, meaning have enough money to live on, I'm perfect. And remember, at this point, there's just a couple people in the company, but I'm good. And I think I needed that moment to just realize, God, I love what I'm doing. I'm okay. I don't need a lot. So to me, that's, at least in my way of thinking about business, that's what I believe. There's the other group of people out there who raise funds and raise second and third and fourth rounds of financing. It's not me. And it works. It works. And you can build a business, but I don't know how to do that. And I don't want to do it. I need to think slow and methodical, and I'll get there one day. And there's some luck that's going to happen. Something's going to give, but I'm going to make money every step of the way, and I'm not going to lose money.
Is there a sunset? Is there a moment in your life that you're looking forward to and saying, I'm going to hang up my hat, I'm done? Or is it, I'm in this business until I die?
It's a great question. I think the way I look at it, as long as I have an idea, I want to try it. I want to try it. I want to see if it can work. I think there's, when I'm even by idea, my new brand is Deacon, is this brand, the Deacon, which is a whiskey. I think it's amazing. I think it's the best whiskey in the world. I think it's the best tasting product. I think it's the coolest package. I think it's got a great story and history.
Phenomenal name too. I love that name.
And I'm just starting. So to me, it could be 10 years before the brand is anything, but I'm okay with that because I think it's amazing and I'll get there eventually. So I don't have a time frame on it because you can't put a time frame on it. You don't know when something's gonna pop. You don't know, people look at, to give you examples of great brands, Patron, they think Patron happened overnight. It's probably 45 years old now. Wow. Brands take time. So I'm enjoying the ride while I have them.
It seems like creating is life for you anyway, right? So it's like the second you take your creative energy out of your spirit, you just don't want to be around anyway. You want to create.
But it's true, Pace, but it's also it's not about my ideas. I think what's more interesting is just executing great ideas. I don't give a shit if it's mine. I've got 200 people working for me. If they come up to, with a great idea, let's go. Let's try it. Let's make it happen. So
has there been a great idea somebody on your team has come up with in the last 5 years that you could recall that you're like, this was something that was monumental? Maybe it was changing the color of something, changing the name of something, changing the way that you guys manufacture or where things come from, anything like that?
It's a short answer, no, but it's thousands of little ideas. And that's what we're good at. It's never one thing. If you said, Brett, what's one thing that made it? It's never one thing. You need lots of things. You need lots of little successes to create a bigger success. So to me, to me, Pace, it's like saying, and I always find this funny, somebody who wants to make something go viral. There's no formula for it. If there was, everyone would do it. You don't know. So to me, it's like when I love the music industry. I talk to artists all the time. And one question I always ask, and the only reason I ask is I love hearing the answer. Your number one commercial success. Did you think it was going to be successful? And 99% of them say no. They hated the song. They never thought it was good. They didn't want to put it out. But they did, and it worked. And what did it teach them? Just try shit. You just got to try stuff. So to me, it's all about lots of stuff, lots of things, because something could work. And then you can replicate that somewhere else. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but then you try to replicate that somewhere else, and the same thing happens.
So you've got Deacon, right? Your newest brand. You think it's the best whiskey in the world. What would you say is different about your whiskey versus other whiskeys?
The taste. It's smoky, sweet, and peat. It comes from Island Speyside, where I think whiskey, I'm a very typical, I think of myself as the average consumer. If you lined up 10 whiskeys, I'd have a really hard time telling the difference between any of them. So all my brands, I want a discernible difference. I want me to try it and be like, whoa, this is different. I never had something like this. And we created a profile that to me it's got smoke, what I call like bonfire. It's like roasting marshmallows. And then it's got peats, and peats is like an old shoe. And this combination, it's not too much where it's overpowering, but it's enough where you want to drink it straight. Or if you mix it in a cocktail, the soul still remains in the cocktail. I think it's better than any whiskey in the world. I think the price point's great. The story, the Deacon, everything has meaning with our brands. And now my job and my team's job is sell it one at a time, account by account, bartender to bartender, buyer to buyer, retailer to retailer. That's it. That's it. It's going to be a slow process, but we'll get there.
Your 200 people that work for you now, would you say the majority of them are doing outreach and building these relationships?
Most of them are sales. So they're salespeople all over the world. So that's another example. I believe in what I call a global brand building. I want my brand in as many markets in the world as possible, because I think my consumer, when he's in New York today trying the Deacon and loves it, he goes to Paris the next day, he wants the same thing. He's not going to change brands. And I believe that helps build a global brand. And for me, so I've got people in all the markets going out and meeting the trade and the bartenders. It's very old school. It's not based on, I'm not advertising. You don't see billboards. It's very old school. It's hand to mouth. And that's the way we've done it. And it works. It works for me. It would be frustrating for a big giant company because it's slower, but I don't know how to build it any other way.
Do you find good people or do you attract good people?
It's a great question. If you ask me the type of person, I want what I can't teach. I can't teach energy, excitement, enthusiasm, motivation, self-starter. I can't teach those things. I can teach you the industry. I can teach you, the pricing and the value chain. I can teach you all that, but I can't teach this idea of, as my brother and I call it, you're on an island and and it's up to you. And that's this, that's how we've approached this for 20 some years. You're on the island, you're the CEO, go make it happen. If you're waiting for me, you failed. You have to go lead this. So that's the common person in whether it's marketing or finance or POS design or sales, it's all the same.
Did your father teach you that from the liquor business, finding the right person, or did you have to find the wrong people along the way and learn those lessons yourself?
Find the wrong people along the way. So our mistake was, I use my dad as a great example. My dad ran a big giant liquor company. He could never do this. Meaning, you can be at a big giant company and have a team under you. That's a very different proposition than working at a small company like ours, where there's no team. It's you. So it's trial and error. It was trial and error, figuring out what is it we want. So age doesn't matter to me. How long you've worked, how little you've worked. If you've got it, God bless. Run with it.
What was your dad missing when he was building his liquor business? Was it a higher level of motivation or an understanding of the business or maybe technology? What was he missing to get to the next level?
Oh, he had everything. His career was amazing. He started 45 years at the same company, unbelievable motivator. He'd make people laugh or cry, depending on the story he told. It's because of him. I love what I'm doing for a living. And my brothers would say the same thing. I think that's the key. If it's not money related, the key, you got to love what you do. You got to love it. And, I love him. I love what he did for a living. I love this business, and it's all because of him. So he had it all. I think the difference, Pace, was it's very different. If I brought in a CEO of the biggest liquor company in the world to run my company, you can't do it because it's a different mindset. It's a different approach. It's a different level. You don't have millions of cases of leverage behind you where you can call up the distributor and he's going to pick up the phone. If I call the distributor, he'll call me back, but eventually that's, that's
and you got to follow up a couple of times.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
What's your relationship now with your brother? How's that going?
Oh, love it. We don't call it a family business, but I have 3 brothers now, all in the business. My brother Brian, who's my partner, runs the U.S. and I run all outside the U.S. in the company. It's a great relationship where we don't speak to each other. We probably speak once every 2 weeks, but it's not because we don't like each other. We're very different, but it's because he's doing his thing. And when he's got a question or he needs my advice on something, he'll call me. And it's the same thing with me with him. So it's a great relationship. And that's where I think our success, part of it was learning. In the beginning, we both did everything. That it up.
Yes.
But
you guys were overlapping responsibilities. You guys were doubling down. Somebody told me the other day, Brett, I'm sure you've heard this saying, they said, if you tell 2 people to feed the same dog, the dog will starve.
100%. Because no one's responsible. No one's responsible. So that's the way I treat brands. So
that's how it was in the beginning, right? You and your brother, Brian, it was just you 2, right?
Correct. And did everything and did nothing at the same time because you're doing everything and you gotta have responsibility. But it's the same. It's not even about me and him anymore at all. It's about making people responsible for what they're doing because they need to be responsible. So I have 5 brands right now. I consider that a lot. So to me, if you can't put focus, it's hard to, I have 6 kids in my house. It's hard to focus on all 6. Someone's going to get a little bit more and someone's getting a little bit less. You got to put the time in on all of them. Otherwise they're not going to move forward at the same time.
I love that. Now with you and your brother, when you guys were working together in the very beginning, obviously you're overlapping. There's probably contention, there's fighting, there's all sorts of stuff that happens. 1, how did you overcome that? And 2, who was your first hire when you guys finally made the decision to start hiring people?
Good. Two good questions. I think the beauty of the way we've approached business with each other is we yell at each other. We yell all the time, but it's not out of, when I say yell, we'll disagree, but it's out of trying to find a place of that something we're disagreeing to make on something to make us better. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
you don't take it personal. And the beauty of working with family or somebody you can, who's not family is if you can trust them and you know that they're working just as hard as you. Oh my God, it's an amazing feeling. So that's where any disagreement doesn't matter because I know the guy works harder than me and I work really hard, So that would be that question. The other one, my first major hire is Scott, who still is with us for, 18, 19 years. But you hire people. I started out in banking and I learned two things. One is you always try to hire somebody smarter than you. Because if you do that, it's going to make you better. And the other is somebody who can do things that you can't do. And in this case, Scott's an English major and he can write. And having somebody, that's something you can't teach. You're either a great writer or you're not. And he's a great writer. And
so he's got a poet's heart.
Oh, that's a huge asset to us. Huge. It still is.
It wasn't even the formal education. It was that he's got a poet's heart. He can write things. Like when you look at your guys' bottles and you look at some of the stuff, it's almost, some of it is poetry to a certain degree. And it's telling a story about the deacon and those types of things that really, really amplify. It's not just liquor. There's 100%. A story behind it and there's a meaning. And that comes from you. Would you say that primarily comes from Scott?
The beauty is he makes everything better. How's that? Everything sounds better. Everything feels better. Everything. We'll disagree on. He'll say words that we have no idea what the they mean, and we'll say, "Come on, you got to dumb it down a little bit for the rest of us." But we're getting a better. We created a better product, and that's the goal. That's the goal.
Would you say that Scott has stayed in the same department or has Scott evolved as the company has evolved?
No, Scott would be the example of a small company becoming a big company. He did everything. He was IT. He was the website. He was the commercial director. This is what we all were at the beginning stages. And I didn't have a business plan. I didn't write a plan saying we're going to have this department, this department. We just grew as we've grown over time. So we've evolved into a marketing department. We've evolved into a POS. We've evolved into, logistics. We've evolved into sales, a U.S. organization, international. It's promoting within. So when I tell people, in France, Sebastian, who we hired, who runs France for us, Sebastian will get there. There'll be somebody under you. Well, guess what? We're 6-7 years later. Now we just hired 3 people under him. So we'll get there. So it's growing below us as we grow up.
So fun to watch. I mean, I've been a big fan of yours and, I've watched so many podcasts with you on them and the story is phenomenal. For those of you guys that have not seen his series on Self-Made, it is phenomenal. We'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. It is very, very good. Man, I'm impressed by everything you're doing. What would you say is the big goal this year and next year? What's the big Goliath that you're trying to take down right now?
Well,
6 kids in one house?
Yeah, I think, 2 ways to look at it, and they're very opposite from each other. I say the quiet part out loud. I want to crush our competition because they have it out for me. So I've got a big chip on my shoulder. But the other is, as long as our trade is happy, we're on our way. So I don't overthink it. You can't get more from, the lemon than, you can't squeeze it harder. It's gotta, brands take time. So as long as every day we're doing a little bit better, we're on our way. So,
this is not a philosophy I'm sure you were born with, right?
No. I was just going to say, Pace, this is based on how back early days, I was the opposite. Let's go. We got to push harder. You can't, Bamboo right now is at this beautiful stage where there's a lot going on. There's a lot of things happening. I can push a little harder. A younger brand, it's again, everything always comes back to my kids. It's like, I tell this story. My son, who's 9, is ridiculous at math and reading. He's 3, 4 years ahead of himself. My daughter's 8, is a wicked artist and very, she can draw, she can sing, amazing. My son can't write worth crap and can't draw worth anything. He's terrible. My daughter can't read or do math well at all. They're the same parents. It's the same kids. And what do you do as a parent? You lean in on what they're good at and you backfill later. And that to me is brand building. Every brand is different. Every state's different. Every market's different. So we're looking at it from, boy, Romania's crushing it on Bamboo. Let's give it a little more. Oh, Greece is crushing it on Bel Air. Let's give it a little more. So you lean in on what's working and you backfill later on what's not. And every brand is a different child.
It's amazing. It's interesting. I've been having some text messages with other people about our brands, and it's great to have this conversation with you for somebody that's much more experienced than me, as a great reminder and a collaborator from afar, just watching you. I appreciate you, especially your words. Actually, I took a lot of notes today. I took notes today from you. And because of that, my hundreds of employees will be benefited from it. I think that there's a lot of times I feel like I push too hard on things that just need time.
Yeah.
And you forget sometimes too, that you have this vision in your mind of how it's supposed to work, because you're the visionary, right? You see the brand, you see the story, you see how it unfolds 3, 4 years down the road, almost in 3D to some degree. Even though it hasn't happened yet, you can see it happening. And when you bring people on your team and you have a 1-hour meeting about the brand, you feel as if you've conveyed that entire message to them. But in reality, it takes them sometimes a year to truly understand your vision. Do you agree with that?
100%. It's all about being repetitive over and over and over to distill in them. But that's not them. It's everybody. It's a mindset. It's how we do things. And, we're not doing it the same as everyone else, but it's the way we do it. And then the beauty is you get surprised, because you're going to have successes you never expect coming. And that's when you realize, geez, just try stuff. You never know. You never know.
What's the next thing you're going to try? Or are you focusing on Deacon right now?
No, it's a good question. I made a decision. We're not going to do it. We've got a bunch of stuff coming, but I don't want to launch them. And I don't want to launch them because I want everybody happy with my current brands. Because again, it goes back to this idea, there's no rush. If people are happy and things are going, they're going to be more excited about the next brand. And what's the next brand? So right now it's continue to grow these. Again, there's no rush. So continue to grow, continue to keep moving the needle, keep making people happy, keep building our army of believers, and enjoy that process, because we get to look back and say, geez, look what happened. Look at this brand, look how far it's come.
Brett, you have no idea how important this conversation was for me today. It's like talking to a friend that's 5 steps. It's actually talking to like a mirror image of myself that's 5 steps ahead of myself.
Well, but for anybody listening, and even for you, like you said earlier, Pace, everyone's got an opinion. So the key is you take a nugget that may work for you. Maybe there's one piece that you take away and you realize, there's something I can do with this nugget. But again, there's so many people who've done it well outside of me. But as my mother says, when the mood moves, you move with it. And I move with the mood.
I love it. I love it. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time, Brett. We'll make sure that the show notes are down below, pointing to your guys' brand. I suggest you guys go and watch his Self-Made series, and you go and watch other podcasts with more of his story and his back history. This was more of a selfish interview on my part.
Love it.
Asking the questions that I had today were for my own benefit. And hopefully they gave you guys a bunch of information as well and some great nuggets. I literally have 2 pages today. I took 2 pages of notes based on what you had to say. Just so impressed and really, really grateful that you came and shared your time with us.
Very kind. Thank you. Shout out to everybody.